Yeah, again, thanks for leaving me with the questions. I'm going to just touch on 3 or 4 things very briefly because I'm getting a nod from the back that we need to wrap up shortly. Value for money and rollout of the program or replicability of the program across Africa. I think people probably are aware that this model has been used as a counterpoint for the design in Tanzania, in Mozambique, in Malawi, across a lot of Western Africa. Niger is the most obvious and most recent example. But John is absolutely right. It's contextually specific, and it needs to be very, very much tailored to the local context and be very much driven by the national leadership. There are some fairly compelling stats on value for money in terms of cost-benefit ratios, etc. And if anyone's interested afterwards, I can share those reports with you. That has been driven very much, I can see some DFID colleagues at the back, very much driven by DFID's push for value for money for a domestic audience internally. Partnerships. We have, NGOs are, civil society at large is involved in the program substantially, I would say. USAID are restricted legally in terms of how they can operationalize the PSMP. They operationalize it through international NGOs and local NGOs. There is a number of social accountability mechanisms that we have within the program. So there is a trust fund within the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development through which NGOs and other members of civil society can access those resources to actually do some independent reviews of both the Productive Safety Net program and also a sister program called the Protection of Basic Services program. So there is a number of ways that civil society are and can be engaged in the program. They've been very engaged in the redesign of the PSMP. They've been consistent participants, stakeholders in a lot of the workshops that we've had, both in terms of understanding the analysis as well as thinking through some of the operational modalities about how the program could be improved. How households are engaged, I think John spoke to this, but again, there are a number of built-in mechanisms within the program to make sure that households receive appropriate information at the right time in terms of who's receiving benefits, when those transfers are going to be made. Can people make appeals if they believe that they've been wrongly excluded from the program? So there are a number of checks and balances inbuilt within the design to facilitate that discussion going on, as well as the other issues that John talks about in terms of participatory planning. Final issue on nutrition. We have reached out and we are having a fairly intensive engagement with the Ministry of Health in terms of exploring those links with the National Nutrition Strategy and the accompanying National Nutrition Program, which is the way that the strategy is going to be operationalized. How we integrate, how we coordinate at both a ministerial and a technical level is a work in progress. A number of different options have been put forward, and it's a question of thinking through actually what's going to work. We know that the last 5 years, despite the attempts that have been made, have been less than successful. In terms of improvements in the program, recognizing nutrition is now going to be up front and center within the log frame. Assuming that we can reach or broker an agreement on that. There are some very specific and very clear activities which are now introduced in the program, not least of which, of course, is the benchmarking of the wage rate. The wage rate has now been increased substantially specifically in order to be able to improve on nutrition outcomes. There's a number of improvements on public works that are specifically geared towards nutrition outcomes. There are a number of the livelihood-focused work that Oyena spoke to earlier, all again geared towards improving nutrition at the household level. But let's also be very clear, this is not a nutrition program. This is a program, this is a safety net program, and it has specific functions. Nutrition is a desired outcome of it, but it should not and is not the main objective of the program.
Thank you. Most of the question has been responded by my colleagues. I will not go again on that question, but I want to raise on some of specific issues. The first one is about these programs. The question raised from my gentleman is, he said that, is it a government program or a different program out of the government? It's a government programs. And the food security program is an initiative to contribute to realize the government development objective. One of the pillars for the agriculture, for the Ministry of Agriculture or for the agriculture sector is increasing agriculture production and productivity. And the second one pillar is to bring food security as a household and at the national level. So we are contributing to realize the government objective of securing of food security at the household and at the national level. With regard to the graduation issues, when I'm talking about graduation, it's a process. We cannot bring graduation at one time, at one day works. It's a process. And graduation is the process of improving of the livelihood of the program beneficiaries and creation of asset and income at household level, which enables them to have sufficient income, which enables them to feed themselves without the support of the PSNE program. So for the graduation, we do have a graduation guidance note. We are not leaving people to be graduate without measuring of whether they are reaching to the graduation level. So for that purpose, we do have a graduation guidance note, and each region and districts are following of the graduation guidance note. And there is also a criteria set to identify the households who are reaching to the graduation level. And for that, we have set a benchmark at what level of asset that the household will be graduate from the program. So this is clearly known by the region and district. And the taking of household data and by making wealth ranking, when the households are reaching to that graduation level, will be targeted to be graduate from the program. Otherwise, as some of the participants are raised, it's not a political decision that the graduation to be exercised. There is a criteria to set for the graduation to be implemented, and there is a benchmark set for graduation. With regard to the backslide from food security level to food insecurity, that might happen. As I mentioned, households who are participating in the program for 3 years and creating of an asset, he will graduate from the program. But as if creation of asset as a household level, losing asset is not a hard work. Creating of asset is really a very hard task, and it will take a long time. But once a household is creating an asset, he may lose that asset within one day because of natural disaster or human disasters. So due to that condition, there is a room to return back, to enter back into the program for those households who are losing of their assets. So we are looking at that and monitoring of the level of the asset, and if they are falling back, there is a room to return back into the programs. With regard to the falling back into the poverty, maybe let me categorize the areas. When we are looking at the entire population in the poverty, outside the PSNEP area, there are vulnerable peoples who are highly affected and become chronically, as what has been mentioned by Dr. Asafa. But we are confined our programs in the PSNEP area on 8 regions, 319 districts. So from our monitoring exercise, when our monitoring, there is no as such backfall of the graduated households into chronic food insecurity in the program area. Maybe there might be, but it does not mean that there is a significant backfall of the graduate households into the chronic food insecurity. So, but in the other areas, there are households who are not being chronically food insecure when we are designing the PSNE program, but these areas, in some of these areas, some of the households become chronically food insecure. So that's why in the next phase of the program, we are trying to address these people to be targeted in the next generation of PSNP and HAB. I think with regard to the I don't want to mention on the nutrition aspect. Yes, as Dr. Asafa said, in the existing programs, we are trying to work on PSNP on nutrition, but the impact of the PSNP on nutrition is not that much significant. So by understanding this, taking a lesson from our experience on the next phase of the program, we have already agreed to incorporate the nutrition aspect into the program. Even the Minister of Agriculture has taken a commitment to mainstreaming of nutrition in the agriculture sectors, and for that we have establishing of a task force to link the nutrition issues with the agricultural intervention as an institute of, as a director under the Minister of Agriculture, the Food Security Coalition Directorate under the PSNE program also try to link the PSNP to contribute to the nutrition, and we are making on board the Minister of Health to work together with the Food Security Coalition Directorate to link the nutrition issues into the program. Thank you.
Just a few comments to add. With regard to government commitment toward this sustaining this program, government is allocating huge amount of credit budget from its own sources for this huge amount of beneficiaries. And regions are annually allocating sufficient amount of credit for their CFI households. Beyond that, grassroots level, community level institutions are being organized. Rural saving and credit organizations are being organized and sustaining and being source of their own credit for these CFI households. These are the approaches the government is following. Beyond that, for graduates, we have also continuous extension support continuing from since their graduation. We have a special support for these graduates, and then we have also a special window for financial service demand of these CFI households. So, I mean, for these graduates. So, to protect backslide of these graduate households. These are what I want to add. I mean, government is highly committed toward this investing on this CFI households and graduate households as well.
Okay, thank you very much for these very good presentations and handling questions and comments, and thank you for the live discussion. Now it's a coffee break time.